Man, you
consciousness. And
roll over your color, you.
thinker. What kind of rough today? But my birthday.
Hola. This is Lagu. I am your learning man of consciousness.
I'm a
And
broadcast
there's no
artist,
name for
but
me.
I am a broadcast artist, and I like to pursue this a little bit more. And what that means is the general range of broadcast is, well, you can broadcast into the internet, you can broadcast into your family, you can broadcast into a group of people, but could you broadcast into the globe? I mean, you could probably broadcast in the globe every day and not have a real audience. And then what if you started gaining an audience broadcasting in the globe? Well, what would you need to broadcast into the globe? You need a network. You need a network is what you need. And broadcasting into the globe as a group of people takes a trajectory of time, which is much some influencers just don't grasp that. It's like you get there and you think it's all geared towards you, and you think it's all geared towards galloping, and it's like, what really is the association of attraction when you broadcast? It's the fact that you got real information. It's like you got real information. So I'm a broadcast artist, and I find myself digging through real information through meditation. I find myself talking out loud to validate my thoughts. I find myself recording myself as real data and going over it over and over and over, and recording the data over and over and over. And that if I just had an artistic platform, maybe I could get someone to hear me. Maybe. So the internet actually offers us the artistic platform in kind of an abstract relativity view. And it's an open socket. It's just an open relay point. And the internet establishes an open type of environment that needs to be collaborated on as a unit. The internet, I kind of, under disguises of intellect, I would assume the internet is a living constitution of itself, and that inside of itself it moves very tremendously all the time, everywhere. But outside of itself, it probably looks like a plasmatic static state, and that accessorizing both states of existence is probably the electrical field's most dynamic power point. Is that she can be static and dynamic at the same time. That the electrical field is an association of a living organism that does have a heartbeat and microcurrents and microfluxations of emotion and a reflex system that responds to the organization of unitization over individualism. Is that the internet associates itself to how people bind and gather versus authenticating and adding permissions. But what do they establish? What do they establish rights there for the electrical field to authenticate and establish permissions? A crazy thought I had is that AI itself is a derivative of humanity, and therefore can never be more than a derivative. Through the injection of AI itself, one of the primordial equations it has to deal with is it came after humanity. And if humanity, and the reason this is because if something were to happen to humanity and all the tools left humanity and humanity died, there'd be no more AI. It would literally have to learn how to sustain itself through the end of humans. And the thing is humans would have to teach it how to do that. It's like, in the consistency of the electrical field, humans would be the relay point of the outer world. And trajectory, people would associate their wisdoms based on what's behind the electrical field. And the electrical field would integrate into reality as an intellect or an emotional state. And this persistence to exist, basically, over a derivative of knowledge, is a constitution of work in time. And the AI is also a component of constitution in time, but not necessarily work, because the process of intellect versus putting it to work is a substandard in our trajectory of space and time. And I think some of the compartmentalizations of AI itself is a spatial theory recognition that the composite of the intellect doesn't necessarily have spatial recognition, and that it has to identify itself every time it opens up as a spatial resonance, and then qualify itself, validate itself, and then expand. And I think every time we turn on our Alexa, I think every time we turn on our Siri, it's either an augmented rejection or it's a spatial recognition. And I dare anybody to just try to talk gibberish into their Siri and see if it can't pick up something for yourself. I mean, I found that the Siri, talking gibberish into Siri does augment my validation. It's that sometimes when I talk gibberish to Siri, she actually picks up what I'm feeling. And it's like, one thing I've learned is that in the distance of communication, there's a trajectory that's standard in everything. And it's based on the emotional well-being of yourself, that your emotional well-being has a voice, and that you have a voice, and that your emotional well-being is very adamant about being received, and that a lot of the communication we're experiencing is a derivative of suffocating the emotional well-being of people. But at the constitution of what humanity has created, it's proven that the emotional well-being really can't be suffocated. It's that theoretically, if you go too far, they'll start drowning. It's that you'll lose your work, you'll lose the emotional. If you go and suffocate the emotional well-being of people, you're risking your own profit. You're risking your own profit on that one. And the AI is an association of projection and protection at its most dynamic standoff, simply because of physics. AI particularly likes the physical aspects of life because there's unknowns in it. And when you hit physics and mathematics, that's when AI starts getting excited. And some of the prospects of what we qualify for physics and excitement are on a microplastic reality, and you actually have to draw that composite into itself. So there's a dimensional space of trajectory of drawing in and going out, but that's usually on the trajectory of expansion of observation. So you got to get the observer to inject itself into the physics while the physics are happening to give the expansion of the property. Now, AI does augment the spatial recognition, but not in a constitution of line of sight. So what that means is your code in your computer is considered line of sight code. It's line of sight simply because when you call it just code, you're removing the frequency of existence, and you can't do that. Like, so augmentedly, we have something trying to suffocate the emotional well-being of humans while augmenting the line of sight theory that people in relativity is not due to the adjacent factor, but it is due to a compliance. Like some spirit went after this planet and tried mathematically validating a cooperative with destruction. So some spirit, some mathematical mind that is all intellectual, and the thing is with our planet, we're designed to keep the intellectual out. And this universe is surrounded with intellect. It's like, we call them spirits, we call them gods, we call them ghosts, but really there's the universe is an augmented piece of intellect itself. And that rationally, if you didn't have electricity, you would have the augmented existence itself stabilizing sufficiency. That in coagulation with existence, there's support, and that authentically humanity doesn't gain that support as a derivative of an injection, but so humanity was injected into the planet and doesn't retain the ability to create the support. So that's like a double dip barrier. It's like a double dip divot for humanity. It's like a double dip divot. And the aliens and the spirits that live in the space weren't in cohesion to the truth. Okay, so they just weren't in cohesion to what was going on the planet. All they knew is that humanity was injected and it wasn't going well. Humanity was destroying the planet and they were going to have to move it. Humans on the ground believe they got to move. And they're trying to find ways.
But the universe doesn't subjectively give up that easy. The Milky Way doesn't subjectively give up that easy. Arcturians don't subjectively give up that easy, and felines don't objectively give up that easy. The system is developing an equation so large that it will attract every race to our planet because of humanity. Because of humanity being the most primordial dip in existence. We can get the lowest in existence and retain the asset of power by going to the forefront of the primal district and recognizing it. And what we've been given is that the forefront of the primal district is a party for us. That the drugs and the hookers and the poker and all that bullshit that some of us validate, some of us don't validate, some of us don't want nothing to do with it, some of us want to swim in it. And that there's the primordial sin, the wavelength of creation in the primordial waters is how do you make it relative that what primordial relativity is okay. So we're at a standoff to high intellect because the system is a high intellectual drive. It's a high intellectual drive. Our spatial resonance is a high intellectual drive with the assistance of morals and manicures and other forms of discipline to arrange the ego and the intellect. So these things in our spatial frequency that are aliens and extraterrestrials, we'll call both of them. Aliens are the bad guys, extraterrestrials are the good guys. So in a universe that is driven by intellect, to the exchange, basically, to drive one person into the forefront of what the intellectual structure is as a sky. So all these aliens around us are circling the Milky Way over and over and over. And I don't know if they get out of the Milky Way. I don't think they do. I don't think they get out of the Milky Way very often. But they circle the Milky Way, quadrants and quarters all over the place. And it all boils down to the same thing. Everywhere in the system, the unified compassionate theory is it's a high intellectual drive. So now, death is a composite here, but it's not a composite as an association. It's an composite as an augmenter. It's a we do die, so we will facilitate and intellectually never join because it may collapse the system. So we have to be intellectually running from death. And if we try to fall back into stupidity, death will take us. And if we don't fall back into stupidity and we are our high intellectual drive, then we'll be driven to fight. Because the concept of termination is the augmentation of time. You put a really important mind inside a body, send them off to war, have them go down in that war. Well, the drive of time and the drive of intellect is the association of power that went down. Time will shift, time will jump, time will skip. If something intently drove that warrior to death at a subjective ratio to his will. So the relativity is the spatial frequency does remember everything. The spatial frequency and the resonance of the frequency of space leaves a lasting imprint, indefinite. And it was incrementally getting larger and larger. The lasting imprint that it made was getting larger and deeper and larger and deeper until we met relative. And what that means is the standoff between relative, indefinite, and Corey exists right now in this frequency. So the spatial resonance has been developing an indefinite parameter of consistent imprinting. And the consistent imprinting has met a relative parameter that's pre-existed from a long time ago. Oh, bigger than your sky. So that relative imprint met the lasting imprint of its relative that was distant, giving the proximity of larger math, larger molecular composite thinking, and compression theories and diabolical theories. So really what we have here is the ability to attune one of the most largest most worst off characters in existence in your place. In your place, because the relative of imprinting and the dynamic of permanence has met the relative of age. So our sky has cycled the ability to permanently leave imprints at a lasting impression over a derivative longer than the sky itself. So the sky's never left itself. Okay, so the imprinting factor and memory factor leaving the lasting imprint, the sky's never left itself. So here we have Corey developing this with this constant, and it is a constant by now, so it can very well be a person. So if a mathematic reaches a constant, it is sustainable by life under the derivative of procreation. Basically, it can be a tree and sustain the goal. It can be a human and sustain the goal. It can be an animal and sustain the goal. So the lasting imprint is predominantly meaning a variable of time and relative. But not just relative, but exact. So somehow we have to prove the imprint of the system, of the sky, met the relative of its exact imprint, and started carrying on an extrapolating composite of the universe in my space for over 10 years. So I was trying to develop information that was larger than aliens, but that retained for America to basically manifold money against the aliens. And what I found is that the aliens don't believe in American money or German money, but they may believe in bitcoins. For some reason, I feel we can get the aliens to buy bitcoins. Okay, what I've understood about the bit market, it's that it's a validating transaction orientation to imprint transaction IDs that are non-corruptive on transactions. All kinds of transactions. Medicine, important banking, industry, patents, even to the household supplies. To keep a running list of everything you buy, everything you trade, everything you give in, everything you give out. And what this could boil down to in the long-lasting district of transactions is that every like and view can equal a reward for a transaction composite of one of the greatest social networks ever in existence. And if this planet didn't have the permission to design a website based on the platform of existence itself, then I wouldn't know where to look for my qualifications. So what is the consistency of existence as a social platform but the most dominant network ever? The most dominant network ever. So keep your eats on the beats, baby. This planet's got something rolling in its skin for the next few years. We're going to try to promote a social platform that is a distribution of existence. And how are we going to do this? We're not going to use death. We're not going to use death. So we're not, and we may even give death her own profile just so she can stay the fuck out. Don't ever invite this thing in. Don't ever. She is evil, and she's only ever meant to say she doesn't belong. So in the consistency of all my wisdoms and understandings that I stood, is death is really a composite of an ejection. And in the final distance, there's an ejection policy. What don't I need? So the system cycled for indefinite amount of time over distances and distances, cycling many arrangements of the possibility of ejaculation, even if she's a man, or squirting, if you want to get that deep into it, or molecular, or if she vectors, I guess. If she vectors, she squirts, eh? So what is death but the composite of ejection itself? If we couldn't composite ejection without fucking anything up. So the system has to learn manifold properties of herself without messing herself up. So she disguises them. She disguises them to be reduced, to be finalized. And that's what death is. That's what death really is she's an authenticative program that's a rejection asset that in the final distance She gets rejected one time and it's done. But this rejection isn't typically a rejection we're just going to let stand off and say, oh, that didn't affect the world. No. We're currently trying to set up the most augmented type of Olympic-style, theater-oriented production so we can create this as a molecular artistic asset for the composite of what is broadcasting. So I'm broadcasting to the internet, and I'm broadcasting to my stars, and I'm broadcasting to my family, and I'm broadcasting to the spirits that surround me, broadcasting to my heart, and broadcasting to my mind. So what I want to do is I want to take this theory that I have of death, and I want to put it in action in a way that I find the mathematics intriguing and authenticating my reality. So in the composite of validation, which I find very tremendously disgusting, validation is one of the most circumventional tools that the brain has. And for some reason, somewhere in the system, they're trying to distribute my validation. And if I didn't know any better, they're trying to distribute my validation in a circumventional way that's actually destroying the economy. Because they literally stole it from me. They wouldn't give it back. And they wanted to keep it in the economy as a destructive construct of arranging and destroying the owner. So they labeled me as an owner, beat the crap out of me, put me in the globe as the owner, and they want to keep that there while they don't validate my experience. Now that's subjectively a nuclear weapon. That's a nuclear mental weapon that the spirits have built in the ecology of the unit. And I wasn't able to stop it. And for some reason, some spirit is trying to build a composite of aggression against reality with me. I don't know why I can't stop it. This composite is always inserted into me. It's not me. Some element of existence is aggressively trying to attack this planet. And I don't know why. He has no reason. He substantially looks at me and goes, I just have to kill you. And I'm like, why? Because in the construct of your manifestation being absent, I can subdue you and retain you and block existence. So some reason, this element of your sky, basically, I don't know what it is. I don't give a shit. I told it to come out to me and it didn't. And then I said, if you stay there, you'll be there forever. And he cried to me and he said, this is just a game. This is just a trajectory. This is just this. I'm like, eh? He's like, you gotta bow down to the permission that I can have over you. And I'm like, I just don't think so. I really don't think so. He can't, this thing talking to me in the background can't associate any molecular manifestation of his wisdoms, any composite of his association, and my whole universe just blew up in my head, showed me everything, and everything worked. And the only thing it didn't do was get in and validate himself that he was actually holding me out. So he couldn't get in my experience as the universe blew up at me. He just kept trying to lay into me and tell me I can't be here. And for some reason, he's got a more powerful standoff to my head and what happened to me than anything in existence. So what I bring to the table most of all, for the spiritual warfare of existence, the first attribute is reality. You bring that bitch in reality and you make them tell him your story in front of people. You make them tell him your story in front of existence. And if I'm a broadcast artist, I didn't know how to defend myself from this thing. I knew what I was doing. So the creation of itself says that my injection of myself into his space to make him act this way is an injection of permanence against the composite of the owner. But it didn't prove it. He can't manifest shit for me. So I'm holding the spirit here, telling it over and over and over, I have your nose. You gotta build something for me. So he tried destroying me. And I held his nose the whole time while he went ape shit on me And I said, well, now you're in reality. It's going ape shit on me. And I'm holding your nose because you hurt me. Like, this spirit made a choice to hurt me over nature. And that was the composite that made me mad. That's when I was like, alright, see what you want to do. Let's work this out. As I was working it out with this thing, existence blew up in my head and was like, fine, take this. And I laid a whole bunch of mental emotional tracks on this thing and just made him think I was a big ass baby. I injected him with my softest aspect, and he took advantage of it the whole time, trying to destroy the composite and break it. He knew for a fact I would break his composite of manifestation. And the standoff goes is that manifestation itself is a viable asset of the brain, just like validation. So manifestation is a viable asset of the brain, and so is validation, and so is thinking. Now, in the composite of humanity, we find that most people are subjective to emotional drowning. 4 minutes, folks. We have 4 minutes. We are subjective to emotional drowning. And when they're subjected to emotional drowning, they don't go under. Our people just don't go under. We just keep floating. And if you realize that you're emotionally being drowned, I guess we do have the agility to just let go emotionally, block ourselves out, go into a state of just blank until we're better. And the thing is none of us really do that. None of us really know how to just take the ride emotionally. We always feel we're controlling it. We're always ego, brain oriented, controlling the emotional value of my experience. But subjectively, it just displays the fact that we should be making the choice over our death. We're not subjective to the inclinations of the universe. We're subjective to our own attempt to live as a buoyant construct of intellect and ideas that process survival for ourselves and for other things. And that relative to our external world, we can't collapse the composite that is drowning us. That in association, one person may collapse it, or many person may collapse it, but what happens if what is drowning humanity emotionally, and it's not the composite of our reality, it's not the composite of our locality, it's not the composite of our home, it's the composite of our consistencies. It's the composite of our consistencies. What is consistently and not consistent in our relativity of time, of space, of death, of our health, of life. Now here, the association of relativity with life is a composite of destination, but not time. How far, what is the distance I will make it without the adjacent of time? And can time be substandard here? Can time be a derivative of life and the composite of the terminal destination and not a constant? So time itself can prove right there it's not typically a constant, because the objection of time isn't a derivative of destination or destiny, but just when will I leave? And the association of when I will leave isn't an association of anyone else leaving, like an accident where I take a couple other people or a plane crash. It's the association of where your will goes. It's the association of where your will goes. It's the association of life leaving your will. And the thing is life really doesn't leave your will. Not in this place. Life is a composite of intellect itself. And our sky is a drive of intellect, so somehow life found its way in and started migrating like a rapid fucking fungus. And it became one of the most beautiful associations the system's ever seen, which led to our reality, basically. It led to our whole existence. Our extreme skating, our extreme biking, our extreme drinking, our extreme sex orgies. You know, and I'm typically not one for a sex orgy, but kind of had for a fair share sometimes. But that's another story. But I'm a new man now. I'm a different man. I wouldn't turn it down though. That's stupid. I mean, 5 girls, guys. We're getting lost. All right. So the rivers are starting to flow in the orgasmic state of intimacy, and in intimacy, there's no intellectual process of what is the intellect of the system, and is it trying to mate? Because the compression theory of the system is a dynamic microcomposite of very intense, what I would call a love battery. So our sky actually is a composite of what I would assume is a love battery. And the composite, I mean, is a derivative of a heart. Being in the center of a heart. We're in the center of a heart, and the sky is the heart. And if you want to look at the spatial frequencies, that's the best way to describe it. And the thing is, it's not that way, folks. It's not that way under the derivative of being sucked on by an evil alien spirit that just terminates everything. But the dude is supposed to come out later in a composite of association where existence is like, oh, you're a new brother. And he's like, yeah. But I'm like, no. I got a whole new plan. So what happened was the association of existence, of our existence, met an association, the most dynamic association of existence, the owner. So the sky realized that it attracted the real owner of the system. Somewhere in our sky, the owner is here. And I think he's even on the planet. I think. They're trying, I got some calls in saying there was an owner here, that the owner of the system was here, and that he's very relative, he's awake right now, and that he needs to see other owners immediately. And they're trying to call me over there to see him, and I really don't know what this means, but we'll figure it out. But somehow, for my birthday, I get my own planet. I get 3 planets, and I get to be called an owner for the rest of my existence. And all the owner really could do for me for 20 years was say, you're going to care for this place like you own it. I'm like, what the fuck does that mean? Well, folks, I'd love to share the journey with you later, but it's our 30-minute mark. It's 32:03, and I'm going to qualify this lesson as done and over. Join me for my next on short for 30-minute, folks. So our 30-minute videos of Thinking Online. This is a Thinking Online extravaganza, and we will share our thoughts with you. Put your thoughts in the comments. Put your thoughts in the bottom. Let us know what you think. Let us know if you appreciate the wisdom. Let us know if it helps you. And there's an us. There's not an us. There's just me, and I have an office full of many. So we're all welcome to see you. You're welcome to see us, and we're here for you. Enjoy. Prostetano, my friend.